Hey everyone, I'm Kai Chimura, the host of Soccerpedia. For today's episode, my guest is Tobias Hysén. Tobias is a former Swedish international soccer player who made 34 appearances and scoring 10 goals for Sweden. He was a part of Sweden's Euro 2012 squad. He has played his club soccer in Sweden, England, and in China. He retired from professional soccer back in 2018. So without further ado, here's the show. Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you. Thank you for having the time, Tobias.
No, no problem.
Can you see my video?
Sorry?
Can you see my video?
Yeah, I can see
Oh,
you.
I got
Can
the.
you see me?
I
Yeah, I can
can't see
see.
you. I can't see you. I can hear you though.
Um, okay, let me see. Uh,
There may be a oh,
Start
there we go.
video. Yeah, here we go.
Awesome.
Probably. There we are.
Hey, hur går det?
Wow. Det går bra.
Ah,
Hur går det själv?
bra, tack. That's about
Good.
all the Swedish I know.
Okay, well, let's keep it in English then.
Yes.
Wow, that light was kind of annoying. Let's see if we can do this maybe.
Oh,
See if we can change. Here we go.
sweet.
A little bit better.
Yeah.
No, not really. Let me see.
Oh.
Okay, here we go.
Thanks, Tobias, for having the time for the interview. I'm really happy that you're here.
No problem.
Thanks. Yeah.
It's it's nice to be here. I'm just gonna fix my
Oh, yeah.
earphones.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing this?
Well, I've been doing this since March because I'm a high school history teacher. I live in the United States, and when the coronavirus first appeared, the schools kind of or they shut down the building, so we had to teach remotely. And so I had some free time, and so as a soccer enthusiast, I wanted to just try something new, and so I figured, why not a soccer podcast? And so it kind of took off that way.
Right. So your listeners are mostly in the US, or is it more in Europe then?
Mostly in the US, but I try to reach out to anybody that's related and to soccer, whether they're a professional soccer player like yourself or a referee or a coach, and just try to find anybody that wants to have an interview, and I just talk and ask questions, and yeah.
All right. So how does that come across in the US? Because I can imagine that it's much easier to. I'm not used to being on camera. I have to sit
Oh
still.
yeah.
No, but I was doing a podcast a couple of months ago with a guy that was living in England, and he was like, "Yeah, we have like a Nordic Scandinavian podcast, but it's mainly for our listeners in the UK." And I was like, "Who would be listening to a podcast about Swedish leagues in the UK?" But similar question to you then: is there any interest in? I mean, in the US, I can imagine if you have European listeners that some would find it interesting, but in the US, it must be hard or difficult.
Well, I do it mainly for just for fun. If something were to, like, if I somehow get more listeners, that would be all great. But I just, I've been playing soccer for a long time, and I've always been interested just to do different research on players, and yeah, I just do it for fun.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and if I
Well,
have
that's as good as an excuse as any.
Yeah, I just do it for fun. I have the podcast on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So I check and see like where the downloads sometimes comes from, and some, of course, majority comes from the U.S., but I do get some feedback from Finland because I have some family in Finland, and some I've actually had one or two. It's not a whole lot, but some downloads in Sweden and other European countries as well. So,
Hmm.
if anybody takes a listen to what, I have to offer on the podcast, they're more than welcome.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see if there's going to be any more downloads in Sweden now than after
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah. I hope so. Heja Sverige,
Yeah, exactly.
So you're the son of former Sweden international captain Glenn Hysén, and he played for PSV Eindhoven, Fiorentina, Liverpool, and he also captained the Swedish side in the 1990 World Cup in Italy. So as a child, did you know that you wanted to be a professional soccer player or football player because of your father?
Well, it's always hard to say if it's because of my father, if it's just because of the interest that I had growing up. Obviously, I can imagine him being a great influence to get me into football when I was a kid. Because obviously, I know what I'm like with my kids. You know, you try and introduce the ball as soon as possible when they're not even capable of walking yet. So yeah, I would say it's got a big it was a big influence, obviously. But then my mom and dad split up and divorced when I was 4, so I didn't really live with my dad when I was a kid. But it's always been the biggest interest that I've had, and it's always been number one in my book. So yeah, I guess having a famous father as a soccer player was probably helping, but I think I would have ended up in football or soccer or one way or the other.
And so as a child, did you when your father was still playing professionally, did you live in other countries where he was playing professionally?
Yeah, before obviously they divorced, they got divorced. We were living in Eindhoven. I think I was 1.5 when we moved to Holland. And then we moved back to Sweden in 2.5 years time, maybe. So I was 4. And then when we got back, obviously, like I said, then in 1986, me and my mom and my sister stayed in Sweden, and a year later, he went to Italy. So basically from 87 to 92, I think he was living abroad, and me and my mom and my sister were staying in Sweden.
Okay. And I'll fast forward a little bit. You were, I think in the year 2009, you were the Allsvenskan top goal scorer. Were you always a striker? Of course, in your professional career, you were, but as, let's say, a youth player, did you picture yourself being the goal scorer or more of a defender, or did you always were always a striker?
No, I was always an attacking player. I've tried to play as a defender quite a short period in maybe a year or so, but that was more down to that there was a change in the ideas of how the fullbacks were playing. There was supposed to be more attacking fullbacks. It was at the time when Roberto Carlos and Cafu and all them were the role models of modern fullbacks, the way you should play. So obviously the coach I had, he thought as a former winger with a left foot, I could cross the ball well, and I was quick. I've always been fast. So he thought if we could learn to just defend a little bit, it would be a perfect match. But I would say I was just too poor on defending, because obviously you have to be able to defend a little bit, even though you're supposed to play in a team that attacks. You always have to take care of the odd defending situations, and I was just not cut out for that. So, but yeah, I've always scored goals, either as a striker or as a winger. So with that in mind, I would say that I thought that I would be either a striker or a winger. Yeah.
Okay. And you basically started out with FC Lundby in the Division 1 Södra before moving into BK Häcken and then to Djurgården, then into Sunderland. So when you moved to Sunderland, that was when they were in the championship in that 06-07 season, and they achieved promotion. So you were there for that one season. Did you think that you wanted to stay on for an additional year and play in the Premier League?
Yeah, what happened was that my career had gone quite well up to the move to Sunderland. But the 6 month in 2006 with Djurgården, before I left, I probably had the worst spell as a senior player, and I was more thinking of a change of environment than actually thinking about which club would be right. But then when Sunderland came in, obviously they'd been in the Premier League the year before, just got relegated. It's a big club with a big fan base, and it was England. It was a dream to play in England. Obviously, my dad had been telling me the stories about Liverpool and how good everything was there and everything. But you know, when you know what happened, you can always say, okay, he was playing for the best team in England at the time, and I was more playing to try and get them back up to the Premier League. But I never really settled in. I wasn't ready for the competition. That's one of the things I would say, because in Sweden, if you're among the top players in the team, you're going to get your chances, and you're going to play, and you're going to have a bad game, and you're still going to be starting the next one. But in England, it's not like that, and it's probably not like that anywhere. But for me, who'd been a top player in the team and like one of the most important players, to come to England and play a role of more like a substitute, or even, you know, playing some games and then get benched and sitting in the stands for some games, mentally, I just wasn't ready for that, I think. And it's easy to say now when you look back at it, but at the time it was more like, okay, I want to play. I want to play every game. And obviously you have to perform. If I had performed, I would have played, but that just wasn't the case. So I was more looking to, what can I do to get more games? And if I'd have stayed, I'd probably played 5 or 6 games the next coming season, obviously, because the quality would be higher in the dressing room, and Sunderland would be playing in the Premiership, and I would have had to. At the time, I don't think I could have developed that much to be playing in the Premier League at Sunderland. Maybe if I could have gone back 2 or 3 years later, then maybe. But at the time, it was a no-brainer to go back.
Okay. Because that was gonna be my next question. Like, after your season in Sunderland, you returned or transferred to IFK Göteborg, and did you know that you wanted to go back to Sweden after Sunderland, or did you want to also try to test out another league in a different country as well?
No, when we decided to go back, we'd been obviously coming from Gothenburg and IFK Göteborg being like my childhood team. It's always been my favorite team. I dreamed of playing there. My dad played there for numerous seasons. So for me, it was more like, okay, here's a chance to go back home. I'd been in Djurgården, obviously, but that wasn't Gothenburg. Even though I had a great time there, it was still, okay, now I'm going to get to go home, like proper home. So it was more that chance to be able to play for that team and that club. And also, when we went for the summer break, we found out that we were having a baby. So that also obviously helped in you know, making that decision to go back and try and start over and see, you know, find a little bit of joy and happiness in playing again, and obviously playing in that club, which was my team and always has been. It would help. So it wasn't a hard decision, really.
Mm. And after spending several seasons with Göteborg, that you ended up switching over to China in Shanghai. What was that experience like, playing for that team for a couple of seasons? What was the quality of play, and what did you take out of it?
Yeah, when you're in the middle of it, it was hard at times, because there's a big change of culture. There's a big change of attitude towards training, towards the games, and, how they should be played, and how, like, tactics, and how you prepare and everything. It's I would say the games was probably the one thing that was the most similar to everything else in football, because obviously when you go out and play a game, it's always going to be 11v11, and it's going to be, you know, you're chasing the 3 points, but everything around it was different. Obviously, it was different because it's far away from home, and like I said, there's a different mindset in Chinese way of thinking in general. But it was, looking back at it now, I'm really, really happy that I made the decision to go there, because mainly I learned a lot about myself, how I react in different situations, and also to be able to say that we took that step. Like we obviously, there's a financial bit to it that helps. It goes without saying, and you shouldn't try and cover that up, because that's why all the best players in the world now go to China, obviously, because they make tons of money. And even though I wasn't on that money, but it was still more than I would have gotten anywhere else. But having been able to go there and experience it, and like I said, you learn about yourself, and you learn about that culture, and you have a bigger understanding in why different people are in different ways, and it's like, I would say you get a bigger understanding again also when you come back, that because now it's going to be a little bit deeper in society talk, but you understand why certain people, when they come to Sweden, would want to live next to other people from the same regions in the world. I can understand why people from Syria want to live next to other people from Syria, because there's a comfort zone that comes with it, and that I learned to understand when we went to China, because you wanted to live next to other foreigners, you wanted to live with the other expats, so that you had something in common in the area that you were living. So that helped me, and I think that has really helped me understand more in a deeper sense the problems that come with moving to a different country.
I was going to ask, so before you moved to Shanghai, were there other teams in, let's say, the Chinese Super League that were interested in for you playing for them?
Yeah, I got a call actually, like only a couple of months before Shanghai got in contact. I got a call from Sven-Goran Eriksson, who was at Guangzhou RNF, and he just asked me if I was interested in coming over and playing for him. But that deal just, I don't know if he ever tried to contact Gothenburg, or if it was just like he wanted to have a check and then they just went for someone else. But when I did come over, obviously we played against Guangzhou, and I scored 2 goals in the first game against them. And he comes up after and he was like, should have gone for that. I shouldn't have let that go. But that was the only team basically that was interested in that. But after the first season, having scored 19 goals and made 10 assists, there were talks about like Beijing and Shandong, but there was nothing more than just talks and rumors, because obviously Shanghai wasn't the major club then that they are now. So it wouldn't have been surprising for, like, say, Beijing to sign a player that scored that many goals.
And so you were in China, or in Shanghai for 2 years before you returned back to Sweden. Did you want to stay like an additional season or 2 in China, or did you think 2 years is enough to go back home?
No, I think what happened was pretty much what we wanted to. But then obviously I was doing well. It wasn't like I was not performing. I scored 12 the next season. Had an injury in the summer, and they decided to move to bring Asamoah Gyan into the team, which meant that I would get less playing time. But I still managed to score 12 goals. So I think if I would have wanted to stay, I could have easily found another club in China. I'm certain of it. But when they came to me and said, we're going to raise the game a little bit, we're going to go for El Kazan, we're going to go for Hulk. Later, Oscar came in. They were looking at a different level of players. So they just asked me, what do you want to do? And I was like, okay, I'll just go home then to Sweden. So they just, obviously then it was just a matter of, okay, but then we'll pay you this amount of money for the last year of the contract, and you can go. So for me, that was perfect. They canceled they bought me out of my contract. I got to go home and play for Gothenburg again. So yeah, it was a win-win situation basically for everyone.
And being in China for 2 years, did you, how good is your Chinese language skills?
At the time when I was there, I basically spoke only Chinese on the pitch. I could spoke Chinese. I could say like forward, back, press, shoot, pass, left and right, time on the ball, like man on and stuff. But I wouldn't say I remember any of it now. I can count to 10, I think. Okay. And I think I can say hi. But it's like the pronunciation is, they were laughing. On the pitch, they couldn't laugh, obviously, because they understood what I meant. But I was like, there's this one funny story about it, because I had an Australian that became one of my best friends when we were there. And we made a competition out of trying to get the taxi driver to get us back to the hotel, because I can remember we were living at a hotel every time there was a game. We were living at a hotel called the Jinghua Hotel, and so they taught us to say that the Jinghua Binghua was like the Jinghua Hotel, only in Chinese. But when we said that, they just didn't understand. He couldn't understand. We were like, Jinghua Hotel, no, Jinghua Binghua, and we tried to pronounce it in different ways, and they never understood. So what happened was, there was a guy just in the streets, and he said, and he said it to the taxi driver, and the taxi driver was just going, okay. And we were like, but that's what we said. That's exactly what we said. So with the competition that came with it later was that when we were going home, we were just going, okay, whoever gets the driver to understand where we're going, he gets a free meal the next day. But we never got anybody to understand. So we just had to like have a business card from the hotel, just showing them, look, this is where we're going.
Wow, that is pretty funny. I gotta say, I can picture that in my mind, just how that all played out. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. It could be frustrating at times, but in the end, it was just funny.
So I want to shift focus more into your international career with Sweden. You made your debut back in 2005 against South Korea. What was that like, that moment?
Well, everything coming up to the game was fantastic. I mean, it was one of these January tours where in Sweden they pick a squad of 22, 23 players only from the Scandinavian leagues, Swedish, Danish, Norwegian. Normally there's not going to be anyone from Finland or Iceland, but
understood.
Sorry?
I said, I understand. They're not.
Yeah. Now, so what we did was we went to Los Angeles and played against South Korea and Mexico. And like I said, everything coming up to the game was fantastic. You know, you warm up, you train for a couple of days, and then game day, and you know you're going to be doing your debut, and everything is going to be fine. And then like walking out of the tunnel and onto the pitch, it was just, I just got so nervous. It was just like one of them where you couldn't really, I was so nervous that I couldn't really focus on anything else but being nervous. It was like, don't mess up this reception of the ball. Don't pass the ball too far because then you'll miss. So basically it was, those two games was just, it was shit, basically. And I was trying, because the next year, obviously, I got picked again. I was just trying to calm myself down. But the first two tours that we were on, we were playing against South Korea and Mexico, like I said. And then we were playing against Jordan and Saudi Arabia, maybe, or if it was Bhutan or I don't even remember the names on the second one. But those 4 games were just complete waste of time for me, because I couldn't perform, and I just thought, okay, this is it. This was my chance. I'm never going to get picked again. But luckily, a couple of years later, I was at a different stage of my career, and I was a little bit more comfort in going there. And I was like, okay, last time you screwed it up because you were nervous. Just focus on what you've done. Just do what you do, and if you screw it up, so what? And it all went better from there.
And you ended up scoring. You ended up in your international career, made 34 appearances, scored 10 goals. You were also part of Sweden's Euro 2012 squad. You didn't manage to find playing time at the tournament, but how's that moment like, knowing that you were a part of the team at a major tournament?
Well, obviously that was fantastic, because the time coming up to that, when they were going to pick that squad, I had a bad spell of games. It was a period that the spring in 2012 was not very good for me. I was like on 2 goals or something after 14 games. So I was just I'd been playing so well for a couple of years, and I was in the national team and I'd done well. And I was just like, I actually managed to screw this up on the last 3 months of coming up to that, picking that squad. But I think luckily for me, John Guidetti was injured. He was sick more than injured. So there was a spot open, and I'm pretty sure I got that one, because I'd been in the squad for so long, and they knew what they were getting. But obviously that was fantastic. It's like that whole month, preparing, first in Sweden, then we went to Ukraine, and being in Ukraine, all that people in training, and around the games, I've only seen these games on TV before. I was in Germany watching the Sweden-Paraguay game, but that's basically all the experience I have from a major tournament. And to be around there and to get to see from the inside what it's like, it's fantastic, because it's such a big event that it's almost difficult to understand if you haven't been there. Like, as a supporter, it's great, because you can relax and you can drink some beer and laugh with your friends and sing and dance. But as a player, it was also great, because you think, okay, we're going to spend a month at a hotel, but it was never like that. The only time I felt, okay, let's just go home, was when we got knocked out against England. Like the day after you were training, and you're thinking, oh, what are we training for? It's like, we're already gone. Let's just play this last game and then be done with it. But then you understand, there's 2,000 people in training, cheering you on, wanting that last game to be a good game. So yeah, but in whole, obviously a little bit disappointed not to get any time on the pitch. But as a whole experience, I wouldn't change it for anything.
Oh, all right. And in your international career, you scored 10 goals, and you, of course, scored against Finland in the King's Cup in 2013. And so I got it. It's it pains. but what would you say is I guess your best goal or funnest moment, I'd say, or outside of the Euro tournament with Sweden?
The best goal is the one against Germany. That there's no other goal that even comes close. Even the quality of the goal, firstly, but just scoring against a keeper like Manuel Neuer, and to get to do it twice is, that was awesome, of course. But then I would say also I have fond memories from pretty much there's some small bits from every gathering with the national team, because you get to train and play and hang around with all those great players, and you get to be friends with some of the players that you were looking at on TV when you were younger. And all of a sudden you're sitting and you're having dinner and you're playing video games and you're, laughing and joking with some of your like childhood heroes. So that was, for me, that was also a big part of it. And then obviously sometimes you just had to stop and remind yourself where you're at. Looking back at playing as a kid when you were 9 and 10, running up to the football pitch and pretending to win the Swedish league, pretending to play in the World Cup, pretending to play in the national team, and all of a sudden you're standing in the middle of a square or middle of a keepy up, and you're giving the ball to Zlatan, and you're giving the ball to Anders Svensson and guys like that. And I can appreciate it more now that I've retired. But I think when it comes to the national team, I think I managed to actually stop sometimes and just think, fuck, you've done pretty well here.
And so basically, how does getting a call up to the national team work? Do you get an email? Do you get a phone call? Do you get a message sent down, I guess, from an agent? How do you know you're being called up to the national team?
Well, the first couple of times when you're on the brink of making the squad, at least for me, they gave me a call. I think it was the assistant manager the first time was like, I just want to let you know that we're going to pick you for the January tour. We think you've done well last year, and we want to see you, and you're going to get to know everybody, and have a little bit of a feeling what it's like to be with the national team and that. And that was like pretty much the whole story for the first couple of years there, when there was just January tours and that odd game against South Korea in South Korea. But then obviously after 2009, when I got back in, you just basically, you get a phone call if you're not picked. I would say if you've been in the squad for a couple of call-ups and then all of a sudden they decide not to pick you, then they call you and it's like, okay, there are a couple of other players who've done well. You haven't really been playing well the last couple of months, so we're going to try and look at somebody different. But it's basically, I was in the squad from 2009 until 2014 basically. So obviously there was this one or two call-ups where I didn't make it, but then it just called and said, look, you're not going to make the squad this time, but you just keep going and you'll probably be in the next one. But then obviously you get your email. The official call-up is an email where they just say, okay, the national team coach, Eric Hamren, is calling this squad to go to wherever you were going. And then all the names were there in the clubs and bring this, bring that. Don't forget your passport. If you have any allergies and food and stuff, you just let us know. And yeah, basically like that.
Okay. And so you called time on your professional career in 2018. Did you know that 2018 was going to be your last year, or did you think that maybe I could have pushed forward another season or two, or how did you make your decision?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think I made the decision when I moved back from China, because I got a contract with IFK in 2016 that was for 2 years plus an optional year, where both me and the club could say no, or just go on and play the third year as well. So I made the decision when I moved back, because I was 34. I was going to be 36 when the third year was over. And if I'd changed my mind during that time, I was just going to say, no, let's go for another year. But the first 2 years went, the team wasn't doing all that well, but I think I scored 10 the first year back and then 9. So I was like, no, let's keep going for one more year. I said to the club, no, I want to play one more year. And they said, like, oh, of course. I mean, you're our top scorer, so we'll just keep going. But then the last year was just, it was just tough. It was hard, I got some minor injuries that prevented me from training every day. And I'd always been used to just going out, coming up, doing my prehab, not even having to do the prehab most of the time, just gone out to the pitch, warming up, and then go 5 days a week, and then a game on the weekend. But all of a sudden I was like training every other day. I was training, and then it was 2 days where I couldn't train, and my body just got worse and worse. Like the knees started to let me know that you're not going to be able to train 5 or 6 times a week anymore. So with that, with all that, in the summer of 2018, I was just like, it's not going to get any better. So I might as well just retire after this season. So I had an operation on my knee, and I came back. I played 4 or 5 games maybe. And then it's like, nothing was changing. If I'd have scored 5 goals in the last 5 games, then maybe I could have just gone, maybe this operation helped a little bit. But it was the same. It was the same thing. You train, you play a game, and you have to rest for 3 days. And that was never the case before. So with all that, I just decided in July, maybe something like that, this will be my last year. I might as well just make my mind up. And then if I change it, then so be it. But I never changed my mind because it was not an option.
Do you see yourself becoming a club coach or a manager, or still being involved in the sport in some way?
I could, but having had the schedule of a football player for 20 years, it's more now with, having some free weekends to spend time with the family. I still play in lower division here in Sweden, but like a playing manager in a what is like, I don't know if it's like the 6th or the 7th division if you count every division. But that is just a small step in taking coaches badges and coaching badges and all of that. But I think I will take all the coaching courses just to have them in case I want to try and do something in management later on. But right now, with my youngest being 4, I think it's in the future. If it's going to be a career in management, it's going to be in the future for sure. A couple of years from now, at least.
And not every athlete has been able to, of course, play professionally their sport or represent a national team or even represent the national team at a major tournament. So my question to you is, what kind of advice do you have for anybody that wants to become a professional level at the highest of levels?
Well, it's always, you get this question and you try and think of something good to say and like, here are the keys, but there's no right answer to that. I think what you need to do is basically you have to have fun, because if you're going to develop as a young player, you're not going to develop unless you think it's funny. You're not going to develop it unless you enjoy going and training, enjoy going and playing games. You have to enjoy. I'm not saying you're going to have to enjoy losing, but you're going to have to understand that losing is a way of learning. Because there are so many players throughout the years that I've seen that's just gone. They've not managed that side of it, so they've just not played anymore. They've just quit. And then I think for me, one of the biggest reasons I came to the level where I was that I identified what I was doing well. Like my strengths was my pace and my left foot. So I tried and developed those things into becoming as quick as I could and just using my left foot as much as I can, like passing, crossing, shooting. But at the same time, tried to develop different things. But those were my 2 main assets. So I wasn't like, okay, my left foot is very good. Now I have to try and train my right foot because I want that to be as good. But then you might lose your edge when it comes to, you have to have something that's different to the other players. So I would say identify your strength, either yourself or with the help of parents, coaches, and then just try and really, really make that strength into something that's going to make you stand out. If you're quick, then be extra quick. If you've got a great right foot, then, make sure that everybody knows that. Train your free kicks, train your set pieces, train your shooting, so that when people are watching, they're going to be saying, okay, he's got some qualities, but his right foot is awesome. And it's about that. You have to have a certain set of skills to stand out. Especially if you're, unless you're like Ronaldo and Messi and be good at everything. But if you're in that group of players that, okay, I want to make sure that I get through, get picked for this team or that team. I think it's very important to have something that stands out.
One final question, more of the humor side. When the next ice hockey world championships happen, who do you think will win?
Ice hockey world championship. Yeah, I would love to say Sweden. But when it comes to the world championship, I think it'll be, Finland has got great teams. It all depends, though. Obviously, in the World Championship, it always depends on which team gets the most NHL players to come and join. But Finland is always normally have a good team. Sweden will have a good team. But if everybody's there, then Canada, obviously, Russia. But in the World Championships, I'll go for Russia then. I think Russia, yeah, but with the KHL and
that's
everything.
That's the mutual enemy.
I know, but since the KHL has been, growing and they're keeping a lot of players that are really, really good in the Russian league, they get to be picked for the World Championship. And then obviously the players that are playing in the NHL now plays for teams that gets knocked out pretty early. I mean, if you look at it now, they would have had Malkin, Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, and the opposite with maybe Finland. And Rantanen is playing for Colorado, still there. They've got some great players that are still playing over there. So yeah, I'll go for Russia then. Oh. Hard as it might sound.
Oh,
yeah,
that's tough.
Yeah, I know. I would love to say Sweden, but I'm going for Russia. I have to, brains before hearts here.
Well, I'm glad that you're being honest.
Yeah.
But Tobias, thank you for having the time to be on the podcast, and I'll let you know as soon as this episode is on the air. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, thank you. It was a nice time speaking English again. I enjoy that, but it's always, you have to think a little bit harder. Some of the words you have to really chase in the back of your mind to find the right words so that it makes sense.
Well, I guess luckily Swedish to English is not too big of a difference than, I guess, Swedish to Chinese, right?
Nah, having a podcast in Chinese, then it would be, it'd probably a lot of words that wouldn't make any sense.
We'll just pretend everybody's a taxi driver.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But thank you very much. Enjoyed the rest of your evening, and thank you very much again.
Yeah, same to you. Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, take care. Bye.